Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So 33-year-old former National Guard member and Florida man Marcus Martin received a text from his mother on January 4th. She said that the Proud Boys were planning to wear all black on January 6th to blend in. That's something that I reported on before January 6th, before the Capitol attack, and I had all kinds of right-wingers telling me, oh, that's fake, that's false, blah, 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 that didn't happen. So clearly, even the participants of the Capitol attack knew. Anyway, Martin replied, quote, yeah, I'm going to blend pretty good. So obviously wearing the same thing. That same day, he drove to D.C., drove with his father. So this was a full family affair. And the following day, his mother sent another text and she warned them, quote, y'all be careful up there, got guard called in. Wait a minute, I thought they didn't call in the guard. What's happening? Anyway, on January 6th, Martin headed to the Capitol. He, went there after Donald Trump's speech. He arrived at Peace Circle as the mob was starting to attack the barricades and the police. And he was seen maneuvering past the police during all this melee. So he waited, until everybody was busy and involved in this clash, this physical clash. And then he skirted through some of the barricades that had been separated and around the police. So Martin stood on the step. He was behind the officers at this point. They were still trying to fight people off. And he raised his hands in the air and then he motioned for the mob to move forward. So after the crowd pushed past the police, Martin and the others advanced on the Capitol. Martin was seen unhooking and knocking down more barricades, and he was waving for the mob to keep going. He was also seen beating his chest, and he yelled out, quote, our house. Then Martin climbed a few steps. He stood in front of the next police line, and he was trying to incite the mob again. So a short time later, a member of the mob was hit in the face with a police pepper ball, and Martin went to see if he could provide first aid. Apparently, he had a first aid kit with him. And when an officer tried to reach this injured man, the officer was trying to help the guy, several other people in the crowd started to fight with the officer. They're attacking the guy who's trying to help him. So another policeman stepped in, and that one tried to help his friend, tried to help the first officer who was under attack. And Martin saw this, and he pushed the second officer with his shoulder. So a third officer stepped in. That person tried to push Martin back, and Martin pushed him with his shoulder as well. Then a moment later, another scuffle broke out. A January 6th participant named Copeland, who was very violent that day, he shoved another member of the mob into an officer. That officer fell to the ground, and then Martin was seen dropping his shoulder, and he rushed behind Copeland, and he was reaching toward the officer. So it seemed like he was trying to get in on the attack. So another officer who was holding a riot shield tried to intervene. They tried to protect the officer who was down on the ground. Well, Martin pushed back. He pushed this other officer back, started wrestling with him, and then Martin grabbed the officer by his vest and he yanked on it. So they both fell to the ground, and then other people started to join in. They started to dogpile on this officer. And then Martin was seen using his body weight. He pinned the officer to the ground by his head and his neck. Now, luckily, other officers saw this going down. They jumped in to help. And then Martin luckily retreated back into the mob. Minutes later, Martin was seen standing behind barricades. He was yelling at the police. And when another member of the mob tried to rip the barricade away, Martin joined in. He grabbed the barricade and he tried to pry it away from an officer. Then Martin pushed the barricade, pushed it into the officer. Eventually, Martin and the other members of the mob got the barricade away from the police, and they created a breach point in the line. Eventually, though, Martin and other members of the mob got the barricade away from the police, and they were able to create a breach point in that police line. And during his 2+ hours on Capitol grounds, Martin was sending text messages. He said in one of these messages, quote, "We are fighting here." And, quote, "I lead the charge. We stormed the White House." Bless their hearts. Anyway, days later, Martin bragged about his crimes some more. So he sent a text message to his wife, and he said, quote, "Well, shit, I guess I was the hero of the town." And then she asked, what do you mean? What's going on? And Martin responded, quote, "Everyone knows. They're like, fuck yeah, man, win it for us." So Martin was arrested on July 31st of 2023, and he was charged with civil disorder, 4 counts of assaulting officers, entering restricted grounds, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, and 2 counts of physical violence. Martin pleaded guilty to 2 of the assault charges in March of 2024. And he admitted in his post-plea interview that he hoped to stop the certification of the election. Unfortunately, that charge is no longer on the books, no longer available to prosecutors. Otherwise, they could have gotten him for that. But he told investigators his dad said the 2020 election was, quote, "all against Trump." And, quote, "ballot mailing weren't fair and right." Oh, Lord. Martin also conceded that he's prone to explosive anger. You don't say. And on January 6th, he said he got caught up in the moment. And they asked Martin, were you concerned about being arrested? And Martin said his feeling was, quote, "if they get me, they get me." But since he wasn't arrested right away, Martin thought it was, quote, "water under the bridge." It wasn't. And based on his guilty pleas, Martin was facing a combined 16 years in prison, 6 years of probation, and $500,000 in fines. The government, however, requested only 34 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. And Martin has a history of arrests and violence. He has 2 previous criminal convictions for driving under the influence and resisting without violence. And in 2015, Martin was charged with felony battery. He pled that down to a lesser charge, though, so he received only probation. So in regard to this January 6th case, U.S. District Judge John Bates presided over Martin's case. And when all was said and done, he sentenced Martin to 32 months in prison, 2 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. So close to what the prosecutors requested, which is actually pretty surprising for this judge. He tends to be a little weak. But anyway, guess who won't be voting for Trump in November? And he now has 2 very serious felonies on his record. So have fun with that. Yeah. But, like he said, if they come for me, they come for me. So they did. And now you're locked up. All right. I will let you all know if I hear any more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Please donate if you possibly can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.